Thanks for tuning in to SpaceX Daily, episode 27. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Today is July 9th, 2026. Let's get into today's SpaceX developments. Falcon 9's 36th flight today extends booster life limits and sustains the cadence needed for Starlink's record deployment year. Booster B1067 lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station Pad 40 at 5:25 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the Starlink 10-42 mission carrying nearly 30 satellites. This marks the booster's 36th flight and surpasses all prior Falcon 9 reuse counts. The launch continues the program's push toward higher annual flight rates while testing the practical ceiling on booster life. This development fits the ongoing Falcon launch cadence and reuse arc by directly probing the key open question of booster life limits. Observers will watch post-flight inspections for any signs of accumulating wear on tanks, engines, or grid fins. Multiple Starlink missions this week, including the 10-42 flight, keep the constellation on pace for a new annual deployment high. The current cadence relies on rapid Falcon 9 turnarounds and the PEZ dispenser architecture that releases satellites in quick succession. This volume growth directly supports the subscriber and direct-to-cell expansion goals tracked in prior episodes. It advances the Starlink program's tracked open questions around subscriber growth and direct-to-cell capability ramp. Next milestones include confirmation of successful orbit raising and initial laser link activation across the new batch. The Starship PEZ dispenser now allows satellite operators to design around high-volume, low-cost rides rather than dictating vehicle requirements. This inversion reduces the historical pressure on rocket developers to customize for each payload's mass or orbit needs. The design choice lowers per-satellite integration time and supports the economics of large constellations. Watch for how future Starlink batches or external customers adapt their hardware to exploit the new dispenser geometry. Notices to airmen covering Mexican airspace have been released for a potential Starship test window opening July 15 at 5:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The advisories mark the next step in preparing for the upcoming integrated flight test. This follows the ongoing campaign at Starbase, where booster catch hardware and ship heat shield iterations remain the focus. It builds on the Starship program last covered on July 8th by advancing the open questions of full and rapid reuse cadence and orbital refueling demonstration timeline. Listeners should monitor subsequent FAA and range updates for any schedule adjustments. The early morning ascent created a visible jellyfish-shaped exhaust pattern caused by sunlight illuminating the expanding plume at high altitude. The effect is a known optical result of the Falcon 9's Merlin exhaust interacting with the upper atmosphere under specific lighting conditions. It does not affect vehicle performance or payload delivery. Similar visuals have accompanied prior dawn or dusk launches from the Cape. The science involves the interaction of the exhaust plume with atmospheric layers at altitude during the ascent profile. Ground teams reported nominal performance through stage separation and second engine start on the record flight. The second stage completed its burns without anomaly before releasing the satellites. The payload count aligns with the current standard manifest for Falcon 9 Starlink flights. Deployment occurred after the second stage burn placed the satellites in their initial parking orbit. On-orbit checks will confirm solar array deployment and propulsion system activation. The satellites will then begin their climb to operational altitude using onboard ion thrusters. Booster B1067 completed its 36th mission, extending the demonstrated reuse envelope for the Merlin-powered first stage. The flight profile remained within the parameters established by earlier high flight count boosters. Engineers will review telemetry for any shifts in engine performance or structural margins. The booster returned to a drone ship landing after separation from the second stage. Observers on r/SpaceX noted the rapid turnaround between recent Florida launches and questioned whether Pad 40 maintenance windows will stay short enough to support the current manifest. Amateur photographers shared high-resolution images of the jellyfish plume and discussed the exact altitude and sun angle geometry required to produce the shape. Users tracking Starship test infrastructure pointed out that the new Mexican NOTAMs cover a wider corridor than Flight 12, suggesting possible changes in the expected trajectory or landing zone. Several accounts highlighted the Ars Technica piece on the PEZ dispenser and debated how rideshare customers might redesign their satellites to take fuller advantage of the volume now available. Worth keeping an eye on, early NOTAM coverage for Starship Flight 13 still leaves the actual launch date subject to final FAA and range approvals. Any extension of the review process would push the test beyond the current mid-July window and delay data collection on the latest booster catch hardware and heat shield tiles. Resolution depends on timely submission of updated safety documentation and weather windows at Starbase. On the AI front, UBS analysts argue that Starship's eventual high mass-to-orbit capability could let SpaceX place large-scale compute hardware directly in orbit, creating a new revenue stream tied to AI infrastructure demand. The note links this potential to Starlink's existing laser link network for data movement between orbital nodes and ground stations. No specific hardware quantities or timelines are provided in the coverage. From an engineering standpoint, the 36th flight of booster B1067 offers a clear window into the physics of reuse limits. Each prior mission leaves residual thermal and mechanical stress in the tank walls, engine mounts, and interstage structure. The cumulative effect is governed by fatigue crack growth rates under repeated pressure cycles and vibration spectra. By flying the same hardware this many times, SpaceX is effectively measuring how far the original factor of safety margins can be consumed before inspection or refurbishment becomes mandatory. The practical payoff appears in propellant and labor costs per kilogram delivered. If the raw material and energy cost of building one Falcon 9 first stage is treated as the floor, each additional flight divides that fixed cost across more missions, driving the idiot index, the ratio of delivered launch price to raw material cost, steadily downward. The current record demonstrates that the index has already dropped far enough to make high-cadence Starlink replenishment economically viable, without new booster production at the same rate. Looking ahead, the open variable is whether the same margins hold once the vehicle begins carrying the heavier payloads or more aggressive trajectories that Starship operations will eventually demand. Continued flights of B1067 and its peers will reveal whether engine bay thermal protection or grid fin actuator life becomes the binding constraint before the tanks themselves. Data from the post-flight inspection will therefore feed directly into decisions on whether to extend the reuse target beyond 40 flights or introduce targeted design changes for the next block of boosters. And a quick market note, SPCX is at $148.30, down 0.4% versus the previous close. Before we go, post-flight inspection results on B1067 and any follow-up FAA updates on the July 15th Starship window will be the next concrete signals to track. That covers everything worth knowing about SpaceX today. SPCX is trading at $148.30, down 0.4%. A quick rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify goes a long way. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. The Do Positive Pod, good news in science and tech, plus one concrete action you can take. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. Prefer reading? Today's full write-up, sources, and transcript are on the episode blog at naranetwork.com. Same briefing, readable format. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.